all back here on our weekly intellectual waterhole, our guests and you, to discuss matters that are vital to our national future. And for this episode, since we've had the recent celebration of EDSA 1 and all the boastful claims for it, it is very timely, especially with the debate between Bongbong Marcos and Aquino III about the direction of the country if Marcos had or had not fallen. Will we be today a Singapore, or will we be today a chaotic Libya? We're going to ask the help of three guests to bring us back to the past of the Marcos period on to the present, the economy throughout this past, shall we say, 46 years, 21 years of Marcos and 25 years of the Yellow movement, which gives around 1 minute per year of the past almost half a century. So it's a gargantuan task, but I'm sure our guests are up to it. We have three guests. If the camera can focus on them, directly to my left is a very regular guest of ours, Professor and Dr. Rene Ofreneo, Director of the Center for Labor Justice, among many other competences, and columnist Rod Capuna next to him, who has been a regular guest also of ours in our old studio. That's why he lost half an hour, because he went to our old studio before coming over here. And Rod is a columnist with the Manila Standard now and Opinion, and a writer of very highly rated books on the internet, Labor-Only Contracting. And to his right is Mr. Jun Aristorenas, past president of the Fertilizer Industry Association of the Philippines. So we get a thorough picture of the changes in the agricultural sector over the past less than half a century. Okay, we go very quickly to Rene. You have 2 minutes for 3 minutes for 3 years of this 41 years.
Well, 3 minutes. Actually, maganda yung debate. It's a very good debate. Whether we could have been a Singapore or a Libya after EDSA 1 in 1996. I think the key issue there was there a change in the system. Mm-hmm. And my thesis is that we changed the personalities in the political system, but we did not introduce enough changes or reforms in the economic system. That was in fact, the economic system that was built by the neoliberals. One side of the Marcos regime was really occupied by the neoliberals, to the World Bank, IMF, NEDA, etc. They introduced this one-sided export orientation program at the expense of real industrialization. This was reinforced and consolidated in the EDSA 1, EDSA 2 era. And to me, to put it simply, this is at the roots of our present problem. That's why we can always say that 25 years after EDSA 1, the same poverty, the same joblessness, the same hopelessness is still there.
Okay. Well, that was very good for 2.5 minutes. So I can add another minute to ask, what about the other side? You say there are two sides to the Marcos economy. What is the other side? And who represents that other side?
No, I remember very well. I'm not counting really the full 21 years of Marcos. I'm thinking more of that. When martial law was declared in 1972, I remember he launched this book, Revolution from the Center. And I'm sort of familiar with some of the authors of those books. You see, their model was really Japan, the Meiji Restoration. And Japan, during the Meiji Restoration, was a modernizing era in Japan. They unified the country. They sent their scholars abroad to learn the latest technology. They upgraded industry. They introduced universal elementary and secondary education. In other words, just make Japan compete with the West, and that's why they won over Russia.
Okay.
Now, the problem is this vision was subverted partly by Marcos himself, because he he adopted a compromising attitude vis-a-vis the World Bank and the IMF. He accommodated the neoliberals in his cabinet. And in the end, he was eaten alive by this group.
Okay. I'll move on to Mr. Rod Kapunan, both from the economic, labor, and even the political perspective, since you also write about politics. What do you see as the difference, the good and the bad and the ugly since then and up to today?
Well, actually, there is a raging debate to what Senator Marcos said, comparing what happened to the Philippines kung natuloy sana the Singapore model. I disagree with that. Kasi ang thrust ng Singaporean development is trading and assembly line production. Wala silang sariling industriya. But on the other hand, the model that was adopted by President Marcos is similar to that of South Korea. In fact, sa steel mill, production ng kotse, lahat-lahat yan. So,
Shipbuilding, car manufacturing,
and everything, almost everything. That was the model that was adopted.
And Marcos was ahead of South Korea by at least a decade at that time. Would you confirm that, Rene? Or they were at the same time? Or
In the 70s, we were more or less ahead of Korea.
You confirm that also,
well,
Rod, no?
So, now, the second issue is that meron bang direksyon ang panahon ni Presidente Marcos at saka ngayon? To be honest with you, noon may direksyon. Inalis sarilis yun eh.
Inalis?
Sarilis.
Sariles.
Oo.
Tracks.
Kaya ngayon ang walang direksyon. Noon may direksyon yun eh.
Pero may direction din ngayon, pero baka hindi doon sa track na naintindihan natin dahil yung neoliberal na sinasabi ni Rene.
Yeah, let me just put it in historical perspective. Medyo, when I said na-compromise si Marcos in the 70s, he realized there was a mistake. And that's why in 1980-81, he was trying to introduce this 11 major industrial projects. But it was a bit late.
Too late.
And then the fuel crisis was there, the debt crisis was there. And remember, at that time naman, namamayagpag na si Mahathir sa Malaysia, he was introducing the concept of look is policy. It's the same perspective that he had in the 70s.
He, meaning Marcos.
But he failed to
follow through. Okay.
Yeah, follow through.
We'll go to the agricultural situation during Marcos's time. And the reason why I remember to discuss this is because your emails to me.
Yeah.
Because when the Egypt situation erupted and the collapse came, I emailed an article from the internet that an American wrote and blamed America's food policy, agricultural policy, for what erupted in Egypt. And that those policies that caused the astronomical jump in wheat prices and other food prices. And remember, the Middle East is not a rice-eating region. It is a bread-eating region, pita and such things. No? So, and Rene emailed me and said, this is precisely what happened to the Philippines, and that made Bong Tangco, the Agriculture Secretary of Marcos, despondent. We'll go back to Rene later, but let's go to the whole story of the fertilizer industry from the time of Marcos and today. June.
Well, not really the whole story, but I can confirm what the two gentlemen were saying, because I was a fresh graduate of AIM then in 1976, and I was a very idealistic person. You know, I could have joined a bank or continued the entertainment business, you know. But somehow I was drafted in the management.
Well, you have the name for entertainment. No? Everybody mistakes him for the action star.
So I tell my friends, you know, my entertainment stopped when I entered AIM. But anyway, when I was drafted in the Department of Agriculture, it was purposely, it was my own personal desire to see what was happening really in government, because I graduated right smack in the martial law years, 1973. And I think we were fast-tracking at the time. And quite frankly, I was very impressed when I was then with the management staff and I was assigned to the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority. That was right in the middle of the OPEC problem. And we were subsidizing. I first worked as the finance officer of the Fertilizer and Pesticide Authority, and our budget then was easily between 2 to 3 billion. That's why, and we were spending it quite well. No, that's why this issue of the 440 million, sabi ko, peanuts lang to nung time namin. You know? How can that become a scandal when our budget at the time of Marcos was between 2 to 3 million? And we were just a support industry to the Masagana 99. And that was, and true enough, there was a blueprint that was there. And you can see where it was leading to.
How much was fertilizer at that time when
At
we
that
were
time, I
we
think-
were producing it in the Philippines locally?
At that time, it was less than 100 pesos.
How much
you
is
know?
fertilizer today?
Now I think it's over 1,000. Talking about urea, it's what 1,500 pesos. You know, at that time, you know, urea hasn't even hit 300. No, and considering the amount of subsidy that we were putting in, we were practically subsidizing almost half of the cost, no, to support the major program of Secretary Tanco at that time, which was Masagana 99, and of course, the Philfos, which is one of the industrial projects, was actually a product of the fertilizer pesticide authority in Bongtangco, because we saw that we were deficit in phosphates, because most of the importations
We don't have phosphates locally. We don't have. So
we are local.
we were
but
getting from Nauru, that island,
yeah,
right?
that's why we
Yeah.
got Nauru. You know, that was a strategic move which Marcos did at the time. We got Nauru as a partner, so they could supply, you know,
phosphate before their island runs out and sink under the sea.
Actually, it was already that
And
was
that
a
was
mined
when
out.
the building of the
Pacific Star.
Pacific Star was built in Makati.
Yes, because the Nauruans were investing in real
That's
estate
right,
because
yeah.
they were very rich at that time.
Yeah,
no?
and they were ready to lose their island nga. No?
In fact, we were looking for an island
Okay.
for them
Okay.
at that time. So those are, so I clearly remember, you know, and Philfos was a product of that blueprint.
Yes.
You know, we were really supposed
But,
to fill up
yeah.
a vacuum.
I'll
in
just
the-
fast track. Did you also have programs for organic fertilizer at that time?
At that time, yes, when I was with FPA, you know, yun nga ano, masaklap the organic program has been there ever since. No, we had the bat
Are
droppings.
you aware when it was disrupted and it did
It
not
was
grow
never
anymore?
really disrupted, you know. Even composting was an idea already of Secretary Tanco.
What year was this? 70s or
I
80s?
started working in the 76.
76. Okay.
Oh, even the worm culture
yeah.
which we were adopted.
Vermiculture,
which
yeah.
we got, I think, from Australia was there. Kaya lang, yun nga na it was because I was telling gentlemen, organic and inorganic are complementary. You know, inorganic fertilizer cannot be absorbed by the plant kung walang organic matter sa soil. So they have to be jointly
Last question
promoted.
before I move on to the other guests again. I have an employee in my little business who is also a farmer, and he says he's never able to really make enough to cover the fertilizer cost. Do you think this would be the situation if we were producing our fertilizer locally today?
Well, you know, two things at that time. Well, you know, again, maybe the real question there is the real answer there. You know, the cost of fertilizers is a result of how much you can gain from palay, diba? You know, the cost of fertilizer will always go up because you know it's oil based,
Yes.
no?
Unless we develop the organic, no?
Oh, and it was, and you know, the projected lifespan of Philfos then, which we were patterning to in the South Korean model, no, you mentioned earlier, was only 20-25 years. So it was just really intended for a certain period, no, and it should, because at the time there was a gap, no, it wasn't really intended to be there for the rest of beyond. Kaya lang, unfortunately nga, the farm incomes hasn't increased.
Yes.
And that yun ang masaklap because after 35 years in the industry, and I look back to where we came from, ganun pa rin, you know. Sad to say, agri hasn't really improved that much. The incomes have not improved that much. So
Okay.
that is, I think, the main problem.
So we'll go back to Rod, who was
Actually,
his fingers were
gusto ko lang ito I would like to clarify this. Ano mo yung tinatawag self-sufficient program natin sa rice production na inano ni Senator, ni Agriculture Secretary Bongtangco. una several ano yan, ibang marami multi ano yan eh. May first sila, may subsidy sila sa irrigation. Another is subsidy sa fertilizer. At saka there was a reorganization of the entire organization, National Grains Authority. Naging exclusive ang buying and selling. Of course, ang iba dyan nag-react, lalo-lalo ng mga traders, dahil gobyerno lang ang namimili at nagbibenta ng bigas at saka mais eh. Pero ang kagandahan naman doon, assured sa fair price ang mga buyers. Sabay-sabay inalis yun. Sabay-sabay inalis yun. Nung inalis yun, hindi na kayanan ng farmer ang patubig.
Well,
Inalis yung fertilizer na subsidy, hindi rin nila nakayanan. Katapos-tapusan ito, ang pinakamaglag, yung fertilizer industry natin ngayon, nung nalaman na nawala yung subsidy, ba't pa kami magmamanufacture? Nag-i-import na lang sila. Maraming fertilizer na nagsara. Because of that, at that time, I remember, nag-i-import tayo ng 250 grains sa Malaysia at saka sa Indonesia. Nag-export tayo sa Malaysia at saka sa Indonesia. Umabot ang kalahating million tons yun na export natin na bigas. And yet, bakit nagkaganon? Then the question now is, bakit ang mga farmers hindi magtatanim? Ba't ka magtatanim? Hindi mo naman mababawi ang cost ng fertilizer at saka patubig.
okay. Before we take our break, the last 2 or 3 minutes before our break, I'll go back to Dr. Ofreneo and ask him why he said in his email to me, Bong Tangko was despondent. What was it that he was despondent about?
Well, yung sinabi ko ni June na mayroong development blueprint na dinagdagan pa ni Rod na what the Bong Tangko and team did, kasama siya sa team, a integrated approach sa agriculture. And it's brought us this boom in 1977 to 1980. We became a rice exporter from a deficit country. Now, biglang nasabotas yun.
Anong year yan?
1980, 81.
81.
And the sabotage came in the form of a policy prescription from the World Bank. I'm a historian, you see. In 1980, we became a guinea pig for the World Bank's structural adjustment program,
That's right.
which later on became popularly known as Washington Consensus. But we were one of the first, including Turkey and some Latin American countries. In agriculture, the prescription is government should get out of the input market, government should get out of the output market, meaning dismantling of FNA, the National Grains Authority, and then government should let the market decide. But you see, in a market where there are many players, and where the players are farmers who do not get right information, how do you do that? So they became victims of a system dominated by traders and so
then,
on.
like the problem we have now,
And then they lack directions.
Actually, let me put it this way. Actually, nangyari dyan.
we have 1 minute before the break. The problem now is the world market is deciding the price of rice that we are importing, having become one of the biggest importers. We have 30 seconds.
No, but let me just complete. And that's why in 1983, I read a memo. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to keep it. A memo of Tangko. I thought all along that he was close to the World Bank. But he said in his memo, I could not sleep over this World Bank policy prescription.
Let me add to that. Ang sinasabi
15 seconds.
Ang sinabi na nangyari lang yun, na-dismantle yan after Marcos was ousted. It was, I remember, nung umupo na sila Mrs. Aquino, ang number na sumapul niya, alam mo ko, Bureau of Customs, in less than a week, 5,000 items ang diniclassify.
Okay, we'll have to
Ng Bureau of
get back to
Customs
that
at that
and
time.
review all that after this break. So